Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we're effectively finishing up the ranking. I know this one's a bit delayed, but in my defense, this is already the second time I'm recording this video. So this is going to be, in my opinion, the best use of Sig Stones. And number one, pending how prestige oriented you are, obviously you can refer to this sheet, and there will be plenty of champions that have been featured in the top ranking series that are, good and have a high prestige, and you can easily go with some of those. But at the same time, there are plenty of champions here that, people do sig up to 200 only for prestige, not because their abilities matter all that much. And so for this video, I'm not really taking prestige into consideration as much. If you do want to rank up for prestige, again, just take a look at this list. You can find the top 30, top 40 champions. And again, a solid 15 or 20 of them I flat out do not necessarily recommend to rank up. And then the rest of them, sure, give them the 6 stones. And, you will get some benefit, even though they're not necessarily like mandatory for Okoye. And also that type of reason is what kind of inspired me to make the next video that I'm going to be to follow this up. It is champions that you can safely rank for without worrying about maxing them out or without singing them up. But this is not that video. This is a list of champions that I highly recommend people do sig up. And I will leave the link to this prestige list in the video description if you guys want to consult it. It gets regularly updated. It is something that I look at frequently myself. Right, so let's start again class by class and skill class. I think there are very few better options to invest your 6 stones in right now as Black Panther Civil War. Now, obviously, his prestige isn't great, but we're not taking that in consideration. But ultimately, for him to do well, you want him to be at a max sig, because that gives you the most damage from the get-go, kind of like start with the most amount of ramp up. And effectively, in a generic type of circumstance, if you do play him properly and correctly, then a single level 2 basically can finish out most of the fights, which is what makes him good, where you kind of like just parry a lot, slowly build up to your level 2, then chain your special from your heavy attack, and you're good to go. Opponents should die. If they don't, that level 2 bleed is quite potent, and it often finishes the job then. So that is Black Panther Civil War. In skill class, I think one of the best use of your 6 stones. Crossbones as well is one of the more dominant champions in the skill class. Offensively, especially if you're quite good with him. And at max sig, he actually gets up to like 90% chance to nullify the debuffs, which synergizes extremely well with his natural ability accuracy reduction. So once you kind of ramp him up, you're not going to be, getting many debuffs placed on you to begin with, but having a 90% chance to purify any incoming debuffs from nodes that you otherwise couldn't kind of like bypass, super useful for him. So it's obviously great. And it also helps him to speed up his ramp up, because he doesn't only purify, but also gains a Fury buff. Moving on, let's go ask Nick Fury. Nick Fury just gets chunkier, basically, because he degens slower the higher his sig is. And that extends the fight, and that is like very big part of Nick Fury's, ability to begin with. So you do want to get him at high sig, which is something that I still need to do eventually as well. And then those are like the best skill options, in my opinion, realistically. At the very least, of the ones that you want to max out. Now, in Mutant class, Jean Grey. It's quite simple. You increase the duration of your Neuroshock passives by up to 9 seconds. That is, by up to 8 seconds. That is a massive increase, and does help her become significantly more potent offensively, and gives you kind of more leeway the way you use the champion. And there you go. So I do think, sigging up Jean is a very worthwhile investment. Mr. Sinister's signature ability is significantly underrated in both long and short form content, because again, you don't know exactly which one you're going to get in the short form. But for instance, in Battlegrounds offensively, if you roll up that cosmic buff, it gives a huge damage boost, and kind of offsets the negative impacts of inequity. Obviously, significantly higher combat power rate. All of that matters both on offense and defense. So Mr. Sinister is a very good target for Sig 200. So he's gentle. If you are planning to rank him up, he's definitely one of those champions you do want to max out, because you will effectively kind of offset his like bigger weakness, which would be the recoil when he's at max ramp, and that would make it kind of like negligible enough for you to be able to actually drop that level 2 with your max ramp, with your max downed up, and not feel like a massive penalty for that if opponent doesn't die. And additionally, you use 10% less power, which is kind of nice. And potency is doubled against skill champions. You can finish out the fights faster. And there you go. That's not bad at all. Then, obviously, Domino. Domino is still a relevant champion. If you do have some spare Sig stones, you know, she's a champion that does kind of demand to be Sig 200 to be at her most dangerous. Moving on in the tech class, Fam. Fam, obviously, you do want, number one, decrease the duration of bleeds and incinerates. That gives him some offensive matchups that he can do because of the max Sig. It also makes him more annoying on defense, because at max Sig, you know, no bleed or incinerate champion will really be viable against him. Plus, his healing gets more potent, and that combined with his, you know, max damage reduction, again, kind of makes him chunkier and a better defender as well. So, Fam is definitely a champ you can easily take to 200. Prowler is another one of those that's completely different. He has like the worst scaling Sig ability in the game, and basically the last 30, 40 Sig stones mean more than the first, you know, 100 and some Sig stones. So if you're going to be ranking up Prowler, definitely want him to be Sig 200. It kind of helps that he's high prestige, and he is actually, in my opinion, very relevant and current tech champion in the game as well. Shocker, you don't necessarily want to get to Sig 200 in my opinion. I think Sig like 120 is fine, because then you retain like 80% of a bar of power when you use that special attack, and I think that's just about enough. At Sig 200 you would retain 100%, but yeah, I think Sig 120 is just about fine for Shocker. But if you gonna rank up Shocker, you do want him to be at least at this Sig level. Nimrod is a must 200 type thing, because Nimrod's Sig abilities increase his damage effectively exponentially. That makes sense, because it works on the potency and duration of his effects. So your shocks get longer and more potent, for instance, and so on and so forth. So and that obviously significantly increases his range and damage and his usability, without a doubt. Then we have Guardian. Guardian has always been kind of Sig 200 or nothing type of champion, really. In order to make his awakened ability to be relevant enough, you need that Sig 200, because that will give you 80% bleed resistance, basically making sure you barely take any bleed damage, using massive energy resistance that unlocks new matchups for you, like, you know, Domino, for instance. And it's kind of all or nothing deal with him. And then you have Bastion, and with Bastion as well, you do want him at max Sig, because you do want his personal furies to get more potent. And whenever opponent gains a regeneration prowess effect, all of Bastion's personal abilities are paused. That's kind of nice as well, but it's mainly the fury potency that you want to be at its max to kind of give him a solid good damage. Unless, obviously, in the metas where you spam level once, it doesn't really matter though. But in general, still, you do want to max Sig him. Cosmic class, it's very easy. Serpent is one of the best use of your Sig stones by far and away, because that increases his immortality duration up to 8 seconds, and that is like the most dangerous phase of Serpent. Generally, when without a counter, you will likely eat that level 3. So getting that max Sig on Serpent is very important for him to be as potent defender as he can be. In the Cosmic class, again, Null, he's a completely different champion when he's at max Sig or when he's at low Sig. At the bare minimum, I suppose you want him to be at Sig, that you want him to be at 6, so 78, I guess. But realistically, you want him to be at Sig 200 for him to be viable offensively in shorter form content too. And you can only achieve that, again, by maxing him out. Then in Cosmic class, Hulkling, it still bothers me how much people underestimate Hulkling's awakened ability, because that increase of 3 seconds to those massive furies always has made a world of difference in terms of like how much damage he can deal and how much he can nuke. And Hulkling has been one of those champions where you drop your level 2, you go immediately, you know, for a stand-up kind of like intercept, you go into a relic and go into another combo in order to finish out the fight. And you do want that fury to be increased. That's just as simple as that. So this is a fairly big thing for Hulkling. Then we have Caroline Dean. Caroline Dean, again, is a reasonably good champion, unduped or even at low Sig, but it's quite simple that each Sig level will give you more damage, because each iridescence buff gives you increased incinerate potency, and that is how you do majority of your damage, which again, matters a lot in kind of like battlegrounds type of content. So yeah, you do want Caroline at high sig. Then Cal. Cal is all about damage, and his sig ability gives him more damage. Do I need to say more? Obviously, it also offers the benefit of being able to re-enable your route buff quicker, which is great. But mainly, it gives you the increased fury potency for 4 seconds after your route enters the cooldown, and that changes quite significant what your total damage output is. In Mystic class, Nico is the second. Well, Nico is one of the 2 champions where it's kind of like sig 200 or as high sig as possible, or don't really bother ranking her up, because again, that determines how potent your passive furies will be whenever you deny a buff with that buff immunity, and that significantly affects her damage both on attack and defense. In other words, this is what makes her a dangerous defender. Very big part of it, and it's also a very big part of what makes her a relevant enough attacker to for her to be fast enough. So there you go. And it also gives you more adrenaline whenever you cause miss, so your regen ability is improved too. So there you go. Nico is definitely a sig 200 type of Mystic champion. So is Kindred. I do recommend Kindred as a very, very outstanding use of your signature stones, given how Kindred is increased in his, defensive potency, given his ridiculous recovery times, and Kabams love to spam root everywhere. So, and bonus quite decent prestige too. But that's not the main thing. Now we do have Kushala. Kushala's signature ability is underrated as well, because turning everything into passives and making that more potent does positively impact how well and how fast she can do a ton of matches. And whilst it will not maybe necessarily matter as much in her perfect matches, it definitely matters enough in like less than ideal matches, or when she's going up against some specific nodes, potentially something like Tenacity and so on. Or ebb and flow nodes where they purify debuffs but do not purify passives. Absman is again type sig 200 or nothing type champion. If you do have Absman, if you do want to rank him up, get him to max of his sig level, because you do increase his Omnimorph form duration, and that is kind of like a key to use him more comfortably. We obviously have Tigra. Tigra I didn't list higher because of kind of how rare she is, I suppose, but Tigra is sig 200 or nothing. If you're not prepared, willing, or ready to get Tigra to sig 200, do not bother ranking her up. She's absolutely worth it, though. In Science class, Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman's absolutely worth ranking up at a low or medium sig, or potentially even Unawakened. But ultimately, you do want to get her to max sig, because number one, intercepting the opponent has 100% chance to grant Fury buff, so that helps her ramp up faster. And additionally, when Personal Fury is consumed or nullified, 100% chance to gain an identical Fury passive. And that still, again, helps her with damage, because she consumes her own Fury buffs in order to inflict power stings, and then you effectively get to replace them with passives, thus maintaining your hit damage, and it is a fairly big deal. So absolutely, you do want to have her max sig. Then we have Photon. Photon, again, just, increase in block damage and applies more debuffs. So yeah, absolutely, as a defender, you want that for your Photon. You want sig 200 that. Then you do want to sig up this guy as well, because if you're going to be ranking him up, and if you want to be nuking stuff with him as much as possible, you do want to have as good of a chance for that crit on level 2. So yeah, you do want to sig this guy up, and he's going to be, the better nuke that he can be. Count Nefaria, another champion where he's a completely different beast at a higher sig. Additionally, if he's a high enough sig, he is going to be a menace on defense in some specific metas too, but let's break it down. So during Ionic Overcharge, passively regenerate 80% of health denied to the opponent due to any reduced regeneration rate. Each tick of this healing cannot exceed 151. So this is also affecting your own regeneration. When the opponent gains 20% of bar power from a passive buff within 0.5 seconds, instantly gain 50 Ionic charges, then activate Ionic Overcharge. So this again helps against bigger power gain mechanics. And this also triggers when they gain 8% of their max health for any reason within 0.50 seconds. And this is what will make him good defender for kinetic transference in Wade meta, by the way. But yeah, No, definitely he's also a champ that you do want to sig up high. And finally, in the science class, we do have Thing as well. There you go. Additional, obviously, worthwhile shoutouts can be given to Onslaught, highest prestige in game, if we're taking that into consideration. Gives him more damage. Yelena with high sig, gets a bit chunkier as a defender. Dark Phoenix, if you have her, she's sig 200 already. Pavitr, he actually doesn't really need sig 200. He just needs to be awakened. Who else that we have that we haven't mentioned really here? From the top prestige ones. Yeah, I think I kind of went over the main ones, really. The rest of them that I have sig 200 here, I'm mainly sigged up for prestige. I'll be honest. There you go. So those are the best champions to sig up, in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. And I will make kind of like an alternate version of this video. The best champions to rank 4 without needing signature stones. But still awakened. Right. I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the next